Hello, students. Let us continue with the summary of the play. We enter into Act Second, and in the scene first, there is a brief conversation between Macbeth and Banquo. It is the same night when Duncan has arrived at Macbeth's castle. Banquo is feeling too restless to sleep, and the cursed thoughts of the meeting with the witches makes him uneasy. In the courtyard, by torchlight, he encounters Macbeth, who is also as restless as himself. Banquo tries to talk to Macbeth about the three witches, but Macbeth says that he is not thinking of them. Macbeth then suggests that Banquo should support him and stand by him when the time comes. And Banquo replies that he will certainly do so, provided he does not have to deviate from the honorable course which he should like to follow. And in this manner, we come to know that Banquo is very clear about his loyalty to the king, and somewhere in his mind, it is quite clear that Macbeth also should not get carried away by the prophecies of these witches. And Macbeth now waits for the signal from his wife, namely the bell that will tell him that the guards are drunk and fast asleep. Lady Macbeth has planned this, that she will make the guards drunk, and when they fall asleep, she will give a bell to Macbeth, and then he can kill King Duncan. As he waits, his imagination begins to work. We see Macbeth is very imaginative, and he sees a visionary dagger to do so. A dagger appears before him. Dagger is actually a खंजर कह सकते हैं, चाकू कह सकते हैं. He tries to seize the dagger in his hands, but he cannot do so. He asks if it is a dagger of the mind or a false creation proceeding from his fevered brain. Then he finds the dagger moving in the air and pointing towards the room in which King Duncan is sleeping. Next, he sees drops of blood on the blade and the handle of the dagger. This is very important to notice. He then comes to the conclusion that it is not a real dagger, but a product of the bloody purpose which is there in his mind. His thoughts are now wandering over the evil things of the night: wolves, witchcraft, rape, and murder. He realizes the horror of the present moment when he is ready to commit a crime, the murder of a guest and his king. The bell rings here, and he prepares himself to commit the horrible deed of killing the king. We enter into scene second now, and here we confront a brief soliloquy of Lady Macbeth. And in this soliloquy, Lady Macbeth tells us that she has drugged the guards to sleep, and that she herself has taken some wine so that she can feel bolder. She also says that she herself would have stabbed King Duncan if King Duncan had not resembled her father when he was sleeping. Macbeth appears and tells his wife that he has done the deed. He and his wife speak to each other in whispers. He tells her that he descended the stairs. Someone stirred in his sleep in one of the rooms and said a little prayer. Macbeth had tried to say Amen, but he had not been able to utter the word Amen. Amen is actually words that you speak when a prayer is spoken. And it means as I hope. Yeah, ईश्वर के लिए थैंक यू जैसी बात होती है, लेकिन नाउ मैकबेथ फील्स दैट हिज हार्ट हैज बिकम हार्डन्ड एंड ही इज नॉट एबल even to speak amen. He is now feeling troubled by that inability. His wife implores him not to think about it, but he cannot stop thinking of it. And he asks why he had not been able to pronounce the word Amen, especially when he had most need of the blessing. His wife advises him not to let his mind interpret his actions in this manner, but Macbeth cannot control his own imagination and says that he also heard a voice crying to him to sleep no more. The mysterious voice had told him that he had murdered sleep. Lady Macbeth does not understand what her husband means, but he continues to say that he has murdered sleep. He will not be able to sleep anymore. He, he is in this manner almost in the state of trance, semi conscious state, with the horror of what he has done, though his wife tries to jerk him back to a more practical state of mind. She tells him to go, wash his hands, and put the daggers into the hands of the sleeping guards so that the suspicion may fall upon them. But Macbeth says that he cannot go back to the scene of the murder because he is afraid to think of what he has done. His wife snatches the daggers from him and goes herself to smear the sleeping guards with blood. Macbeth hears a knock and feels terrified. He wonders whether all the waters of the ocean can wash the blood clean from his hands. This is the poetical nature of Macbeth which comes into the front. He is washing his hands again and again, and it seems to him that his bloody hands can turn the entire water of the ocean into a red color of blood. Lady Macbeth returns after having smeared the guards with blood. Now her own hands are red also. She says that a little water clears us of this deed. See the difference of the thought process. Macbeth is carried away by his imagination that his hands, blood stained hands, will not be cleaned by whole of the water of ocean. Rather, the water of the ocean will get red. Whereas Lady Macbeth says that a little water will clear them of their deed. There is more knocking, and Macbeth expresses the wish that this knocking would wake Duncan, that is to say, bring back the king to life. Means he wants to undo what he has done. He wants to say that whatever he has committed may not be committed. But what you do, you cannot undo. We enter into scene third, act second. Uh, Actually, the castle porter has heard the knocking, but he is drunk, he's sleepy, and he is not able to answer. In a comic soliloquy, he speculates how hard he would have to work if he were a porter at the gate of hell. After having amused himself for a little while by imagining that he is actually the porter at the gate of hell, he opens the gate and admits Macduff and Lennox, who have come to rouse the king at the hour which had been fixed by the king. The two noblemen are received by Macbeth, who is at this time in full command of himself. While Macduff goes to rouse the king, Lennox speaks to Macbeth of the terrible storm that had been blowing during the night and the earthquake also, which had shaken the earth. See, Shakespeare is master of these things. He enters such natural happenings in the midst of this horrible scene, Macbeth replies that it really was a rough night. Macduff now returns crying, "Oh, horror, horror, horror." On being asked what the matter is, Macduff says that King has been murdered. The whole castle is now thrown into a tumult. Macbeth quickly kills the two guards simply because they have obviously committed the murder, but really, we all know, because he is afraid lest they should plead their innocence and thus create a complication for him. He justifies killing the guards on the plea that he could not control himself to have such treacherous murderers alive. Both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth play their parts very well at this moment. Macbeth even gives expression to a feeling of profound sorrow over the murder of King Duncan and says that the world has become empty and life has become futile with the death of their king. The two sons of murdered king, namely Malcolm and Donald Bain, suspect treachery on the part of Macbeth and come to the conclusion that their own lives are in danger. "There is daggers in men's smiles," says Donald Bain. The two brothers decide to steal away when there is still time and leave Scotland. It is noteworthy that Lady Macbeth faints in the scene when, in a tone of horror, Macduff speaks of King's murder. We enter into scene 4 of Act 2. Uh, Outside the castle of Inverness, Ross is talking to an old man who says that during the whole of his life he does not remember having witnessed such a dreadful night. Ross agrees and expresses his own feelings on the occasion by saying that although now it is daytime, the sun seems to have been strangled by the darkness. The old man says that this darkness during the daytime is as unnatural as the murder of the king that was committed during the night. Macduff appears on the scene and informs Ross that Malcolm and Donalbain have fled from Inverness and from Scotland also, and that the suspicion of the king's murder has therefore fallen upon them. Macduff also reveals that Macbeth is going to be crowned as the king. Here, Ross points out, with the sons of the murdered king absent from the scene, Macbeth alone is the next heir to the throne. And in this manner, we come to the end of Act Second. In our next lecture, we will talk about the summary of Act 3. Thank you very much. That's all for today.